Welcome to the Women in Wellness podcast,
where we believe that the world can be changed one woman at a time.
Your journey to becoming more present, healthy, and joyous starts right now.
Hello, Women in Wellness. Dr. Sonia here with Dr. Caitlin. And I think we have a pretty important topic to talk about today to help you guys navigate the next few months. So today we're going to be talking about how to prep for your holidays and what you can do after to pivot back to your path. So sometimes what happens is we have this build up towards our holidays and, we may be working on our health and we're on this journey and we're getting into ketosis and we're fasting and we're detoxing and we're doing all these things. And then the holidays show up and then we can feel really deflated. One, we may feel like we can't participate. Two, we may feel like we're having some feelings of like guilt and shame around the food that's there. And if we indulge, then it creates this whole other cascade of emotions. So what we're trying to do today is to, one, say that it's okay. And also to help you navigate those emotions around it and also give you some tips and tricks that you can utilize so that you have a successful gathering with your family. Mm-hmm. So Dr. Caitlin, what is something that you've maybe heard from a client or a patient that they struggle with when it comes to the holiday season?
A lot of anxiety around it because their family might not eat the way that they eat, or they aren't used to cooking a holiday meal now that they've changed their lifestyle, how they eat. And so it usually stems from a lot of anxiety, honestly, and a lot of, I don't even know what to do. I might just give up and just go full on in, do whatever. And who cares ultimately? And that's really the wrong mentality. I always tell people, go in with set rules that you're not going to break, that you're not willing to bend on, and then be flexible with other things. So my example is, I am set on not eating gluten. That is non-negotiable for me. So I don't touch anything with gluten, but I will eat higher carb vegetables that day, like mashed potatoes. So there's a lot of give and take. How about you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say the same. So when it comes to, I'll use Christmas as an example because Thanksgiving's over for us Canadians. So when it comes to that day, what I do is I just make sure that my routine is still set in the morning. I'm still having my tea that I usually have. I'm still kind of intermittent fasting and kind of, it's a bit of a feast day. So what I would do is just have, like you said, those rules of gluten and dairy are the things that I'm not going to touch, and sugar is the other thing for me. But otherwise, yes, I'm having the mashed potatoes. I'm having the gluten-free stuffing and I'm doing, I'm eating more and I'm just satiating myself from a soul perspective. And I may even have a dessert that day, but it's usually a dessert that I make. So I always put myself in charge of the desserts to make sure I can control what's going to be given. And, my family will have their own set of things as well. But just because I've got the kids too, I want to make sure that they have the right options during that time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love it. And I think, there's so much stress around the holidays anyway. Honestly, after Halloween straight through New Year's, it's just sugar, 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 from candies to cookies to baked goods to everything. And so it's hard sometimes to say no, but saying no with the right intention behind it. So if it's a no because it has ingredients that, are on your no-no list, like for Dr. Sonia, dairy, gluten and sugar. For me, it's definitely gluten and sugar, and most times dairy, because unless it's a super clean dairy, I don't do it. But, being flexible, I think, is the biggest thing, and treating yourself. So maybe instead of everybody, and this might not be happening anymore at the office, bringing in all sorts of treats and baked goods and that, and you feeling deprived, maybe you bring in some cookies or something that you can have and keep a few extra aside for you so that when they bring out these other things, you can pull something out and still indulge with everybody.
And I think the important thing to understand is that when you've been doing the work, your body has created that metabolic flexibility, which we've been teaching. And when that's happened, if you are to do this indulging day, your body will pivot a lot faster than it would have maybe a year ago before you were on the path. And, I actually go back to an example that you talked about last year with a patient of yours. And I think there were sisters, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, and they had like this Thanksgiving bet going with them. Maybe you can share that a little bit again, because I think it's such a great story for people to learn from.
Are you talking about the two sisters? They were twins who
Yes.
One said that she was going to make changes for her health, and the other one said that she didn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
And so the one twin that had made the changes had done unbelievable. Like she lost a ton of weight. Her blood sugars were stable because she was a type 2 diabetic. Her energy was through the roof. And so everybody at the holiday season was just complimenting her on how amazing she was doing. But what happened was after, I think it was Thanksgiving, I think you're right, what they were talking about was the amount of weight that they gained from, that Thanksgiving meal. And the one sister who did nothing for changing her lifestyle, making dietary changes, even making, mental changes, so working on the inside, gained, I think it was something like 7 pounds it was 5 to 7 pounds. And the twin who had made those metabolic changes gained 2 pounds that day, but the very next day lost it again. So it really didn't affect her long term. And they were eating almost the same foods. There were some things that she didn't indulge in because it didn't fall within her lifestyle choices. And that just goes to show you that you can still indulge, especially like you said, when you're metabolically flexible and you have certain restrictions or guidelines on what you're willing to indulge in. Is that the story you were referring to?
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a beautiful example of exactly that, especially when there's two twins, because sometimes we get into that mindset of like, my genetics tell me this, and this is just my fate when it comes to my health. But it goes to show that if you actually put the work in and you make the right choices for yourself, your body will thank you. Your body will serve you, even in those moments where you may feel like you've gone off track. And I think what you said before is so important, is that flexibility piece in our bodies and in our mind, so that we don't get stuck in that cycle of shame and guilt, because that in itself will create havoc in the system more so than the food itself. So I think how we're receiving the nourishment, so that question that I always tell people to ask is, is this going to nourish me? And maybe in that moment it's going to nourish your soul, like gathering with your family, doing the things that you're doing on your holidays. That joy that you're feeling from that connection will outweigh whatever that little piece of chocolate or whatever you're indulging in is going to do. So I think it's really creating that balance within our minds is so important when it comes to the holidays.
Yeah. And sometimes I think that when people deprive themselves of, partaking or enjoying some of this stuff, it actually has a downward spiral effect, because what ends up happening is they end up like overindulging, and they end up ultimately falling off, the wagon, and they have a hard time getting back on. Because if we overindulge and all of a sudden, we just bombard our taste buds with all of this processed sugar, that's definitely going to have an effect on how our brain conceives food and what we end up craving. So it's just being smart about it. So why don't we, I love that you started to touch on, your routine around the holidays. And I think if we talk about, what do we do like during the holiday season? Because ultimately this really is like a 2-month period, truthfully. For Canada, it can be 2.5 months, depending on where Thanksgiving falls. But what is it that you do during the holiday, and then let's talk about maybe the day after, and then we can talk about what we do intermittently to prevent both like that downward spiral effect, but also to ensure that we're not going to ultimately like take 10 steps backwards kind of thing.
Yeah. So what I do is, in my week, we've talked about diet variation. So I'm either doing a 5-1-1 or I'm doing a 4-2-1. So I will just look at my week when it comes to that specific holiday and be like, okay, so that day is going to be my feast day. So I work around my other days around that day, making sure that during the week, I'm doing my intermittent fasting, I'm doing my 24-hour, I'm eating all the things. And when it comes to Thanksgiving, many times I'm doing the cooking. So if I'm doing that, I'm really like immersed in the cooking itself. So just like the smells and everything is just like helping support me that day. And if I have control over what's being made, then the options are already dairy-free, gluten-free, sugar-free. So that works out for me. But if I'm going to somebody else's home and where I'm not going to have control over many of the things that are in there, I'm definitely doing my usual intermittent fast. And maybe that day I'm also doing, it's more of like a 24-hour. So I'm having that big feast couple of hours, because in an Indian home, no matter what time you go to dinner, you are getting a lot of appetizers, even if it's like 6 or 7 in the evening. And this is a struggle we have had with our family, with our young kids, because their bedtime is between 7 and 8. And I have said, skip the appetizer, let's go straight to dinner so the kids can go to bed. But no, we have appetizers, then you have tea, and then you have the meal, and then you have more meal, and then you have dessert. So I just know it's going to be a big feast day. And so what I do is in the coming days is usually where I will put my 24-hour fasts, or I will do some sort of like just, soup in the morning, like bone broth or something, more in the evening. So I will just like create variation. And then in that variation, it just creates more flexibility. And then I feel better. It's like you said, if you move from eating a certain way and you start eating processed, that your body will tell you, like your mind will still will start feeling foggy. You won't feel like yourself. And I don't want to feel that way during the holidays. I want to feel like I have energy, and, I want to feel joyful and all the things. So I'm just really careful about what I choose in those moments. Yeah. What about you?
Very similar. For me, depending on where I'm at and what's happening, I'm like you, I cook. So I know that if I'm cooking, that I'll be able to eat everything. So that usually isn't the issue. But I will eat all day. So like Christmas for us is like I will make gluten-free like cinnamon buns. That's the only day of the year that I ever make cinnamon buns, because one, they're a pain in the butt, and two, they're not necessarily part of a healthy lifestyle long term. But they are healthy because I use, better sugars and all those kinds of things. Now, then, because I do that and my either tea or coffee to tie me over while I'm cooking. And then like you, we literally eat from like 2 in the afternoon till like 7 at night, 8 at night. But when I'm doing that, just like you, that is my feast day. Like I am full on feasting. I am getting my carbs in. I am getting my fats in. I am getting everything in. And the one thing that I always try and make sure that I do is, depending on the number of people that are going to be there, I try and make sure not to over make desserts. Or if there is a ton of desserts left over, I always send them home with people, just so that it's not something that, in the coming days, I'm like, oh my God, I got to eat these because I made it. So there's little things that I do to try and, get rid of it. We try and give away food and be like, okay, here, take this home with you. Like, here's a Tupperware, here's your Tupperware. That way you're not as inclined to continue feasting for days on end. And then, so working up to it, I usually do a 24-hour fast the day before, and I usually do a 24-hour fast the day after. I'm not necessarily, going crazy with carbs. I'm probably more around 20 carbs on 24-hour fasting days, just because it's harder to get that much food in a smaller period of time. And then in between, so other than like feasting all day, I just make sure that, leading up, that I'm making sure that once a week I am still having my feast day during that holiday season so that I can indulge in some of, the festivities. Like maybe I'll make myself a special, like, I don't know, eggnog. I don't really like eggnog, but that would be an example, like an eggnog coffee or something.
Mm.
That way I don't feel deprived.
Yeah, I think it's so important that we're talking about this right now, especially with all that's going on in our world with people's immune systems and some of the fears around what's going on. And I think the missing link that sometimes we don't tap into is that this season where, the pressure is changing, things are happening in our weather system. We're also in this state of holidays where there is a lot of sugar, right? There's so much sugar from Thanksgiving to Halloween, and the other way around for Americans, it's Halloween and Thanksgiving and then Christmas. So here we are staying indoors more, eating more sugar. And so I think now really is a time to kind of step back a little bit and observe maybe our past patterns and habits around this time of year and understand that, okay, well, what can we shift so we can really create resilience in our body and strengthen our bodies so that we also feel like we're contributing to our immune system and not indulging in the sugars and things like that. So really looking at recipes that will allow us to still feel satiated in that sense, but also serve the body too.
Well, and I think another thing to be mindful of, especially like you mentioned, this is a far more stressful time with everything like family and gifts, and then, vitamin D going down and our immune systems being more taxed. And being mindful too, the one thing that I always make sure that I do during this season is be extremely mindful of when I drink any type of alcohol. Now, I really don't drink much alcohol anyway. Like I think in the past 3 months, I may have had 2 glasses, 3 glasses of wine kind of thing. But alcohol is going to further stress you out. It's going to further drive up your blood sugars, which is going to cause you to crave more, sleep less. So all of these things we just have to be conscious of. And I'm not saying deprive yourself, like never have any if that's something you want, but just be mindful of it.
I think also just reframing that word deprive, because when I think we link into the word deprive, we're thinking like we're missing something, but maybe instead let's like reframe that into like, how am I going to nourish myself? So the way I'm going to nourish myself is making a choice of not having too much alcohol, not having too much sugar, and not having these things. So I'm not depriving my body. I'm actually feeding my body. I'm feeding my body with this good nourishment and this self-care and this self-love, because your body's worth it and you're worth it. Yeah.
I like the idea of replacing. So instead of, having that cookie that somebody makes at your office, replace it with, I don't even know what you might want, but you can replace it with like a Larabar. You can replace it with a fat bomb. You can replace it with a piece of dark chocolate. Those are typically the things that I will replace it with, like a good piece of dark chocolate.
Yes.
Yum.
Yeah, with a little hint of mint.
Oh, see, I like salt.
Okay. That's my weakness, the mint.
The mint?
The mint, yes.
So what would be some examples of the different fasts that people should be playing with, especially during this time, to not only support immune system, but to literally prevent them from, gaining the holiday 10, the holiday 15, whatever the heck is going on these days.
Well, with this weather, I would say bone broth fast would be amazing to kind of bring into your awareness. You can do a partial fast, you can do a water fast. I mean, it's really, if you've been training your body to do these things, it'll be easy for you to navigate which fast is going to be best to serve your body in this moment. But I think just giving your body like a simple break of doing a bone broth fast can be really great. Eating more soups and stews and things that are really easy to digest. In Ayurvedic medicine, like the vata is what's really off in this season. And that's the thing that controls movement in our system. So in order to increase our digestive fire or to support that system, we want things that are easy to digest. So then just doing, days of like what we call khichdi. So it's like some dals and things like that, things that are really warming for the soul. I mean, that's what I would do. Yeah. What about you? Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I like the idea of playing with your eating window. So,
Mhm.
we always recommend a minimum of 13 hours no food.
Mhm.
Reason being that really allows the body to reset. There's a ton of research that shows that it reduces the reoccurrence of cancer. I think it's by like 70% or something. So 13 hours really is the minimum. Now, with that being said, that means that you have 11 hours to play with for food. So, scrunching that down to 2 hours, playing with a 24-hour fast, playing with, a 36-hour fast or a 48-hour fast. And if you want to do the bone broth, do the bone broth in that time or do water. Playing with the different types of foods, like going really low carb, going higher carb, never, ever, ever missing a feast day during the week. That is probably one of the most important things
Mhm.
that we'll stress over and over again. But really playing with it and seeing how you do, take out coffee, take out tea. How do you feel when you do that? Is it going to push you a little bit further? Because sometimes coffee and tea for individuals, it kicks you out of fasting and ketosis. Others, it doesn't. So, the other thing that I would recommend is testing. So getting like a keto mojo meter and testing your blood sugar and ketones to see how you function best. Now you can do it based on how you feel, but if you're looking to really dive into the how your body's functioning, that's where that keto mojo meter comes in. And then, playing around with it, like not doing the same thing every week, every day of the week, because we're humans. We get into habit. We like,
Mhm.
schedules. We like reproducibility. We like to know
Mhm.
what's happening, but playing with it, change it up. I like to actually write out, like on a calendar, what I'm going to do and be flexible with it. Sometimes that
Mhm.
has to change, but that really helps a lot of people is when you can see what it's going to look like, it's easier to follow through.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up the habit piece because as you were speaking, I was thinking about like the habit and the norm around the holidays is to indulge, and then January comes along and we have our New Year's resolutions and we have all these things that we want to do to lose the weight or get back into shape and get that energy back. So what if we change that paradigm? Like what if we change that relationship to that new year? Instead, we're looking at like the whole picture and moving through our holidays as if it was any other day with the side of the gathering piece and enjoying some of the elements. So like for me it's mint during Christmas or whatever it is, like instead of seeing that okay, this is what I do in the holidays and then I do this, but really like how do we use the skills that we have or the tools that we have throughout the entire year no matter what's coming our way.
Hmm. Yeah. And guys, don't, there's so much stress. And I know I said this already. There's so much stress around the holidays. Adding additional stress isn't going to help any.
Mhm.
So don't worry about the potato. If you want the potato, eat the potato,
Right.
um, like I said, the easiest way to navigate holidays for me anyway is to have clear boundaries and know why I have them.
Mm-hmm.
The boundaries for me, especially with gluten, I feel like garbage when I eat gluten. So I'm just not going to eat it. And because I know I feel like garbage when I eat it, I'm not even tempted to eat it. Like it's not even
Mm-hmm.
a thought process in my mind, like, oh, maybe I'll just try it. And so it makes the holidays and navigating it so much easier when you have a why behind it and you're allowing yourself other things that you might not eat on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. And I have to say, for me, Thanksgiving pumpkin pie. I love pumpkin pie. So we all have our things, and in those moments, it is okay. So we really want to take the shame and the guilt away from any of it.
Mm-hmm.
And like Dr. Caitlin said, have your parameters, have the things that you really need to create that stability within yourself, and then give yourself permission. Just give yourself permission to be joyful in those moments. Yeah.
And good luck, guys. Let us know how
Yeah.
it's going for you. Let us know if you need any help or any support, because that's what the group is for. And you got it. You got it. It's a feast day. Enjoy.
It's a feast day. Enjoy it. Yes, absolutely. So happy holidays to everybody. Enjoy your time together and enjoy the food. Enjoy yourselves. And we will see you next time.
If you've been enjoying the Women in Wellness podcast, please take 2 minutes to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes.
This helps more women find the podcast to get the information they have been searching for.
This way we can truly change the world one woman at a time.
Remember, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook,
where we're sharing information with women every single day.
Join us next week for another episode of Women in Wellness.
And as always, thank you for listening.